Hi, this is Carsten from UFO Denmark. We are so glad today to have a person from the US, from California, a guy called Enrique Vilanueva. He is a hypnotherapist by profession, and he also has a lot of interest in C5. So, Enrique, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for the invitation, Carsten. My name is Enrique, and I live right now in California, United States. I've been living here for the last 20 and something years, and my experiences of contact started in Peru in the 1980s, 1988, officially, because that was the year when I started having experiences with the Rama group. Rama is a group of contact that started in Peru in 1974 with the experience of Sixto and Charlie Paz Wells. And through them and the group they formed, I started practicing the protocols of Rama. It's kind of like a C5, but older, and we don't use any kind of devices or technological artifacts to do the contact, but we are trained in protocols that depend on our minds. We have to meditate a lot, practice mantras, trying to develop intuition, sensing through our hands the energies of the location, stuff like that. And through that sensitivity, eventually we become more and more aware of who we are, what are our capacities, and through knowing ourselves, we get to know them, this intelligence from the other side. It's like they embrace our effort to expand consciousness, and they even stimulate our path. So they approach us when we are actually practicing these protocols in the areas like deserts or mountains or the ocean, and it's really good to have that exchange with them. Most of the times is sightings at the distance. In the high sky you see the lights moving, and sometimes you can have a sighting that is closer, maybe the form or shape of the ship. In other occasions, you can even have an encounter that can go at different levels. You can see, you can have an encounter through your dreams, like in an astral projection. You can also have meetings with them when you are meditating. It's like they somehow enter your mind and project the images you need to see in order to exchange with them. In other occasions, you can even have the side of a physical form, the physical presence of them, or sometimes it can be kind of like a holographic image of them. That's not so common, but it happens to many people in the Rama practice. And of course, when you enter the Rama group, and you are the newbie, the new guy, you want to experience everything. I was very curious. I was 18 years old when I entered Rama, and I already had sightings before I entered Rama. I think since I was 12, I started having those paranormal experiences that took me into the path for searching for this other reality. So when I arrived to Rama, I already knew how to do some astral projections. I already practiced meditation for many years, since I was 12 years old. And so I was kind of like ready for the Rama protocols when I arrived with the group. And for me, it was easy to assimilate everything they were feeding me. And it was great to have a sighting with the group, not just by myself. And that was a confirmation that the contact was real. And now with witnesses, that reinforce your path. It's like I'm in the right place. And eventually, after many sightings, I decided that I was ready to have a closer experience with them, with this alien intelligence. So I remember that I was trying to have the automatic writing experience. It's like you get a paper and pencil or pen, and you open your mind with the intention of receiving an exchange of information with them. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but we call antennas to the person that can receive that information. And I thought maybe I am the antenna of my group, because my group, the new guys in Rama, we didn't have an antenna. The antenna is a person that received straight, direct from the alien intelligence. And other groups in Rama already have their antenna. And I thought maybe I could be the antenna for my group, so I started trying the communication. The first night, 15 minutes after I started, I only feel some energy in my head and shoulders, and then it vanished. So the second night, I try again, paper, pen in hand, and as I was trying, I sense like the presence of someone in the room. I open my eyes, look around, nothing, and then the energy again, and nothing happened. So I thought I'm gonna try for the third time, and if it doesn't happen, then I'm done. Probably I'm not the antenna. So the third night, in my house, the same location, the dining room, I was sitting in the chair with the paper and pen and waiting for the communication, opening my mind and putting all the good intentions in the exchange and friendship and all the stuff, when suddenly I felt again the energy running through my head and shoulders. And I sensed the strong presence of someone in the room, and I thought it was my brother or my dad. It was a masculine presence in the room. So I opened my eyes and looked around, and there was no one. So I closed my eyes again to try again the communication. But as soon as I closed my eyes, I saw in my mind's eye very clearly that someone was behind me with his hands open like this. And through his hands was this energy coming into my skull. And then I sensed the energy that was hitting my skull and going through my skull, hitting my forehead. It was like a buzzing sound going through my head, like bzzz, bzzz. And with the third sound, there was an explosion of light. That's what I saw, light exploding in my head. And then I saw clearly in front of me this guy standing tall, like maybe, I don't know, 6 feet and something else. I would say 1 meter, 90 centimeters. A tall guy, very strong. His body looked like an athlete, like someone that practices probably gymnastics, because his shoulders were really with a very nice shape, like a person that lift weights or lift his own body. And he was wearing some kind of tunic, a robe that was made from some material that looks like silk, very fine material. The fabric was drawing his shoulders very nicely, and it went down, and he was standing in front of me, and I was in shock. I was like, I cannot believe this. I was just expecting a thought in my head, probably someone giving me some information for the group. What is this? I was in shock. And I noticed around his body, there was a contour of light, but very close to his body. And when I saw him, the first impulse is to run, because you are in front of the unknown, and That was the first time for me, an apparent physical encounter. And I was so nervous that I remember that I tried to control myself not to run. And I asked him, are you gonna say something so I can write? Because I need to break the ice of this moment. I was really nervous. I was feeling my heart in my throat. And I asked him, are you gonna dictate? Are you gonna say something? And then he looked at me, and from his body, I sense, because I couldn't see this, I sense energy coming from his body and embracing me. And that energy that embraced me made me feel his fraternal love. And immediately my mind translated that feeling into little brother. He was telling me, little brother, not with his voice, but with his embrace, with his energy. And I noticed immediately how my brain could translate his energy. And I realized that telepathy is not just the sending thoughts, it's actually emotion, and it's more than emotion and thought. They are not separated, and they are so complete, so whole, that you cannot distort the content of the information. I was absolutely sure that he was my brother. Somehow he made me feel that way. And I didn't have any doubt that his intentions were good. Just with the feeling, I had the whole information that I was safe with him. So that relaxes me a little bit. And then he started telling me that he was in the need to calm down, because I was not the antenna of the group. I was not the person that was ready to open the channel for communication. So he came down to tell me that he values my effort to be of service for my group. And whenever I was in the disposition to serve my friends, my group, they were more than ready to facilitate experiences for me. And he told me that I was not the antenna, and I was supposed to go to the group and tell them what happened. Just tell the story. And from the group, the newbies, the new guys in Rama, there was going to come someone that already had the channel open. That's what they say. There is one between you guys that already had the channel, and we are going to use him to give information to the group, but you have to go and tell them. And when he finished giving me that instruction, I was like really calm, but my mind was also very quiet. And that surprised me, because I knew that I had 1,000 questions in my mind, but I couldn't even find one. It was like somehow my mind was erased at that moment. I knew the questions were there, but I couldn't access them. I was just observing him in awe and amazed by the experience. And when he noticed that I was not going to say anything else, he just like smiled. I sensed like that was the goodbye. And then the light, that contour of light around his body started shining bright, and then his whole image collapsed into a spot of light in midair, and he just vanished. Like those old TVs from black and white, when you turn on that TV, all the image went into a spot, a single point. It was kind of like that. So at that point, I wasn't sure if that was a physical encounter or if they project some kind of imagery that I could see. But that was a very, very real experience for me. And that was the first time I had an exchange, an encounter that I consider physical, even though I'm not sure still, but I saw him with my eyes. And from there, I grew up in questions, and I wanted to have more experiences. It's like you are hungry for to see how deep can I go into this search. So I remember that I was getting more and more involved into the Rama practices. And in my meditations, I received symbols that were very, very clear for me. One of those symbols, I'm going to show you. I put it in my book. My book is in Spanish, so don't get too happy. There is no translation yet. This is one of the symbols. Without the man meditating in the center. It's just the triangle and the circle carrying the triangle. And that symbol, I received it when I was in meditation. One day, I just felt in my room that I had to go to the roof of my house. So I went up, it was like noon, and I look up in the sky thinking that I was going to have a sighting in the middle of the day, but there was nothing in the sky. But I was absolutely sure that there was something there that I couldn't see. So I remember I closed my eyes trying to perceive this in a different way, and suddenly there was an explosion of light again in my forehead, and I saw clearly the symbol, a triangle carried by the circle. And when I saw the symbol, it was like made of bronze, of metal, and the symbol had a meaning attached to it. And the meaning was very clear for me. It was like the meaning was already there. I didn't have to interpret the symbol or investigate more. I knew that the symbol represents human beings that are going through this transformation that is about to happen for humankind. That transformation speaks about a kind of human that already shift from third dimension of consciousness into the fourth dimension. So this symbol represents a man of fourth dimension of consciousness. And the symbol told me something like, this is being born. This new man is being born. But it requires of balance between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual side. This is the human of the fourth dimension of consciousness. This is the sun man on earth. Sun man on earth. So it's like the sunlight, right? And for me, it was amazing to see the symbol and to know the meaning that was attached, because I already heard in Rama about the fourth dimension of consciousness. And many communications received through telepathic means, through automatic writing, were speaking about the fourth dimension of consciousness. And they said that it was the next step in evolution. So I was really amazed, thinking that the symbol represents that content. And the curiosity was there. What is the fourth dimension of consciousness? So I carried that question with me for a long time in Rama. As I keep searching, I went to the archives of symbols in Rama. No one have ever in Rama received that symbol like mine. However, the symbol was included in another bigger symbol that was attached in the cover of the first book that Sixto Paz published. So I searched who was the person that designed the cover and why did she put that symbol there. That person was now my friend. She was a yogi that practiced with Rama for the beginning years of Rama. And she was having amazing experiences through meditation. And in one of those meditations, she saw that symbol. In her case, she not only saw the triangle and the circle carrying, but the triangle was also carried by an inverted triangle, like a Star of David, the magenta David, they call it in Spanish. But my symbol was included. So I thought she's the one that is closer to what I experienced that day. And then I realized the symbol I received was also in all traditions. I found the symbol in the alphabet of the Greek. It's actually, the triangle is the alpha and the circle is the omega. So this is the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end. And it represents the transcendence of time. And that's the same thing is represented by the man of the fourth dimension of consciousness. We transcend time. We don't see time like others see. It's not just a timeline. It's actually the control over the timeline, what is expected. And also I found the symbol in the Aura Mazda, the god from the Babylonians. The Aura Mazda is a representation of this man that is wearing some kind of skirt, and there is a circle closing his body and the triangle of his skirt at the bottom and wings open. So my symbol was inscribed inside. Also, I found the representation of Ra between the Egyptians. Ra is also a circle, and the rays that are coming down from the circle are actually forming the triangle at the bottom. And also is the representation of the Ankh, the Egyptian Ankh. If you see the Ankh, it's also a circle that is more closer to the omega of the Greek. And then the bottom part is like an elongated triangle that represents also the alpha. So I find out that my symbol was not mine. It was actually received by humankind through history. And is pointing at the path of evolution that is walking with us from the beginning. And I realized that this experience went beyond Rama. This was not just about a group of people having the experience of contact in Lima, Peru. This was about humankind going into the process of evolution. So at that point, I wanted to have more experiences to uncover what was behind this experience of contact. What does it mean? How is this connected to the past, to other cultures from our past? But the thing is, the Rama group was very focused on the experience of contact mostly. So I sensed that in the group there was some form of fanatism from some members. They were going around the image of the leader, and I think that really distorted the path that we were invited to walk with this alien intelligence. So I keep searching and trying and meditating and doing everything that I was supposed to do until one night with my friends, I have a sighting. I had an interesting sighting, but I remember all my friends were excited and I told them, I already had the sightings. I am ready to have the encounter with them in a ship. I would like to travel with them. I said that. And well, hours later, I was in my house sleeping. It was like 3 a.m. when I sense energy running through my chest. It was like the buzzing sound in my head, but it was going through my chest. It was like zzz. So I opened my eyes in the bed and I noticed this huge guy. He was standing almost like going down because he was so tall that his head was actually touching the ceiling of my room. His hands were stretched, and from his palms were these blue beams of light coming down into my chest, and they were going through my chest with that buzzing zzz. And when I noticed that, I thought that I was dreaming that was the first thought, like, I must be dreaming, this cannot be real. So I stretched my hand, and he took my hand, and he stepped to the side, to the feet of my bed, and I was sitting now and looking at him, and I was like, this is amazing. I mean, this cannot be real. I must be dreaming right now. And then I sensed the invitation from him. The energy came from him, and he told me, you said that you were ready to go with us, and we are here. And then from the corner of my eye, I noticed through the window that I have beside my bed that this light was coming, approaching the house, like pulsating light that was approaching and going around my house. And when I saw that, I realized, my God, the ship is here. I said that I was ready, but I didn't expect this to be so soon. So I was getting afraid at the moment. And then I tried to calm myself down. I closed my eyes, trying to not to see the guy in order to calm myself and maybe be able to confront the experience as I was invited to do so. And no, when I closed my eyes, it was even more difficult. My mind went crazy, imagining things that were not supposed to be. Like, I thought that the guy was some kind of vampire. I don't know why that came into my mind, but I realized that I was agitating my mind. So I opened my eyes and looked at him, and he realized that I was not ready. And I even told him, I cannot do it right now. And he told me, don't worry, there will be another time for the experience. And then he stepped to the side of the bed, and I went again on my back. He put his hands on top, and then the blue beams hit my chest, and I went unconscious. I woke up around 6 a.m. feeling like the whole room was moving. It was like when you drink alcohol, too much alcohol, and you feel like you're gonna vomit. I was ready for that, to vomit. I was feeling the whole room was moving, and I stand up quickly and ran to the bathroom. And as I was trying to push that coming from my body, I felt like it was something dry, something that came out from my throat, and I threw it in the toilet. It was like a piece of charcoal. It looks like that. It was a black piece of thing, a dry thing that went into the, and I was like, what is that? Immediately when I expelled that, I feel like all the dizziness was gone, and the feeling of throwing was gone too. And I sense that I have to flush it. I don't even have to question that or trying to find what was that. I just have to flush the toilet, and I did it. But then later I was questioning myself, what was that? Was that a healing? Were they healing me from something I had already inside, or they were depositing something inside of me so I can confront the change in density when I go into the ship? And because I reject the experience, I have to expel that. I don't know. To this moment, I don't know why or what was that. But then I realized I lost the experience of my life. I was really mad at myself. I was feeling depressed. Like, no matter how much preparation I have, whenever I confront them, I feel I'm not ready. And I keep trying. I keep meditating and doing all the stuff until one day I had this dream where they were telling me that I was supposed to go to the Chilca Desert. That desert is 60 kilometers south of Lima, Peru. Lima is the capital of Peru. And I was supposed to go to the kilometer 60 and then go into the desert 4 miles and then stay there, camp there. and I was going to meet with two other friends that were supposed to arrive to have the experience together. So it was going to be a group of people, not just me. And I thought, that's great. Now I can confront the experience. I thought if three of us are being invited, then it's going to be easier. I'm not going to feel so scared in front of them. So without asking the other people if they were invited or not, I took my things, my sleeping bag, my tent, and I just went to the Chilca Desert. I arrived to the location probably around 4 p.m. and I started doing my meditations and the stuff, waiting for the friends that were supposed to arrive, but they didn't. And at night, I had some sightings, and the friends didn't arrive, and I was getting this uncomfortable feeling that if something happened tonight, I'm gonna be by myself, but now in the middle of the desert, not just in my house or in my room. I'm gonna be in the middle of nowhere having an encounter. And I didn't like the idea of confronting this by myself. So I remember that I went to sleep. I went into my sleeping bag, and around 5 a.m., I sensed something. I opened my eyes, I sat into my bag, and I looked at the distance, and I noticed this white mist that was running at the level of the floor, and it was going in between the hills, but advancing through the plateau. And when I saw that bright mist, I was like in shock, because that was the location that I was supposed to go through if I'm going back to the city. I have to walk between those hills. And I was thinking, if I stay here, that mist is going to get to my location and something is going to happen. And I cannot wait for that thing to come my way. I'm alone. I don't want to live this by myself again. I don't feel prepared, and all the story that I had in my mind. So I immediately grabbed my things, fold my sleeping bag, put the backpack, and then started walking towards the hills that I was supposed to go through to get to the highway. It was 4 hours walking. So I remember thinking, I just have to walk. I'm not going to stop. No matter what happened, I'm going to continue walking, and nothing is going to happen. I'm going to be fine. And I keep telling myself these things as I keep walking and walking, but suddenly I was already in between the white mist. And I kept walking, and as I did, I felt the echo of my steps. I thought maybe it's because I'm in between the hills, but it's strange because I never noticed an echo in that location when I walk. And I continue walking, thinking that it's just me, it's the echo of my own steps. And suddenly I heard a piece of metal that was huge hitting the ground. The sound was like clang. And when I heard that, I was like in shock. I stopped and just breathed, and I was like, please don't get close to me. I'm not ready to do this. And I cannot have this experience. And as I keep telling them that, I was really afraid. My heart was bouncing really fast. And then suddenly I was walking towards the highway. And then the bus arrived, and I went up into the bus. And as I was sitting, I noticed the clock in the panel of the driver. And the clock was pointing at, I think it was 1 p.m. And I was like, no, that's not possible, because I walked from 5 to 9. It's just 4 hours walking, and it cannot be 1. So I missed time at that moment, and I realized something happened in the mist that I cannot remember. So even though I couldn't tolerate the experience happened without the participation of my conscious mind. So then I was even more frustrated, thinking that I was not going to recall what happened. And I started practicing meditation again, trying to search into that memory. Eventually, I remember parts of what happened. I went into the mist. When I heard the big piece of metal hitting the ground, I stopped. And as I was talking, like, nothing is going to happen, please don't get close to me and whatever, I noticed from the corner of my eye, there was some kind of vortex inside the mist. And I didn't know if that vortex was creating the mist or if it was absorbing the mist, but the mist was going around this vortex. And from the side, or standing on the side of the vortex, there was this very tall being that was there. And he was looking at me, and then I approached him, and he showed me through the vortex, and I saw this entrance that was like an arch. And as we entered the arch, I noticed some symbols around the arch, and then entered and saw kind of like inverted pyramids in the ceiling, and they were like orange in color. And I don't know what else did we do inside, but at some point he showed me this. They were like cylinders of crystal, and inside those cylinders were bodies, human bodies. And then he pointed at one of those, and I realized my body was there. So I was asking myself, then who am I? If my body is inside floating in that thing, then who am I? And those are pieces of the experience that happened there, but I don't have the full recollection of what happened at that experience. I was disappointed. I was frustrated that it didn't happen in my conscious level, but I guess my fear was too big. I was not ready to confront the experience whole. And as I grew in disappointment, I remember deciding that I was going to quit Rama, that I was going to follow my own path, and it was not going to be a weird path because I already followed the weird path since I was 12, and I was going to have a normal life. I was going to study a career like anybody else. I was going to be a professional in whatever area I wanted, and I was going to have a family. I was going to be just a normal guy. I didn't want to have anything to do with anything crazy. And I went into meditation, and I told these beings that I was grateful for the experiences, but I couldn't follow the path anymore. And I saw them looking at me and closing their arms and just saluting like, it's okay, it's your decision. So I went away from the experience of Rama, and I started involving myself more and more into the formal education, the university, and months passed by. And in the month of May of 1990, I was getting ready for the midterm testing in the university. And as I was studying, I had the sense of something looking at me. It's like there was the sight of something looking at me all the time. And if I was in the bus or I was walking in the streets or studying in a classroom, I had the feeling like something was looking at me. And as the days passed by, I had the sense that that thing looking at me was getting closer and closer. It was closing around me. And I think at the moment that it was probably my mind that was trying to go back to my old self. My mind was trying to trick me into meditating again and doing all the spiritual stuff that I already rejected. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do that stuff again. I'm going to be a normal guy. I don't want to get involved in those things anymore. And as I reject that, the feeling was getting closer and closer until one afternoon, I was studying for this philosophy test that I had to give the next day. And as I was reading Ortega y Gasset, the philosopher, The Revolution of the Masses, I was reading that, and I remember that I understood the thoughts of Ortega y Gasset in a way that was surprising to me. It's like I understand perfectly what he was trying to say and the meaning, the deep meaning in his words. And then I realized that as I passed the pages, I already knew what was coming. It was like I already had the information of the book, even though I haven't read it all. I searched through the book, and it was like the content is already in me. How is this possible? And I thought, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm imagining things. All these years searching for expansion of consciousness, and now I think I'm this machine that feeds on information. So what is this? I couldn't believe what my mind was telling me, that I already knew. So I remember I grabbed a marker, and I started marking the ideas that were more interesting. And I was expecting that my mind focusing on the ideas maybe could return to the sanity and realizing that I actually didn't know what I thought I knew. As I tried to read, the feeling of that eye that was looking at me was closer and closer. And I went to the bathroom, refreshed my face, washed my hands, and went back to the room. But then the feeling was too close to me. And I realized that I really knew the content of the book. So I stopped and I said, okay, if that is the truth, then I must know other contents. So I went to my library. There were many books of my father there. So I grabbed one of the books, and I sensed that when I touched it, the information from the book was transferred into my mind immediately, just by contact. So I honestly thought that I was going crazy. That is not possible. But then I reviewed books that I already read in the past, and noticed that my mind was making a different, more complete interpretation of the ideas of the books that I already had. When I grabbed back the book of Ortega y Gasset, I realized that I not only knew the content of the Revolution of the Masses, but I knew the content of all his books. All the books of Ortega y Gasset, not only the ones that he published, but the ones that he planned to publish and he didn't. It was like, it's difficult to understand this. It's like being immersed in an ocean of information. And somehow I had access to everything at that moment. And I couldn't believe my conscious mind. It was like, this is impossible. This cannot happen. So I stopped with the studying, and I tried at that moment to do the pranayama. If you know the pranayama, you actually breathe through your nostrils, alternating. I did it because in the past years before, I practiced some hatha yoga, and I learned the pranayama to balance your energy. So I thought, if I'm completely unbalanced, going crazy, maybe this is going to help. So I tried the breathing, and when I did that, I saw in my mind's eye this bright fire in the base of my spine. It was so powerful that I thought that it was real fire. And then I tried to sense, and I felt like this is not damaging my body, but it's there. Because originally I felt like, if this is real, this is a spontaneous combustion or something, I'm gonna die here, or what is this? But then the fire didn't damage my tissues, my organs. It was just there in the base of the spine. So when I saw that, I thought, this is interesting. Maybe those are the chakras all the people are talking about in the new age literature. So I started the breathing, alternating, and then I saw from that light, that bright golden light, came this. It was light, but it was moving like a snake. It was moving up my spine, like going up and touching different levels. And whenever it touched a level of energy, the energy expanded like a field around my body. So I realized that the chakras were not actually only discs that are in a plane, they are a field. And it's not only in the third dimension. This thing is expansive, it's actually moving. And it was moving from a center outwards and then going in from my back. And then that snake continued going up and up, and it jumped from the solar plexus, where we are supposed to have that chakra that was already active in me, and it didn't touch the heart chakra. It went straight to the throat. And then I saw this bright blue light that exploded in sound, because the sound was so powerful that I stopped doing the breathing and I covered my ears, thinking that it probably blew my eardrums or something. It was really powerful. I was scared that that thing really made my ears explode. And the sound was extreme, was like, my mind at that moment was so scared that it fractures. My mind told me, this is what happened to you after all these years of searching. Now you cannot escape. Now this crazy thing is inside of your head and you cannot run from it. So what are you going to do now? So my mind was really agitated. And then I noticed another part of my mind that was in calm. And that was the first time in my life when I could separate myself from the egoic mind, I think. That other side of my mind was telling me, if you cannot go back and this is it, then why not continuing with the experience? You cannot go crazier than this. If you are already crazy, keep going. And that voice was so fine, so calm, that I decided to see if that was possible. So I released my ears and looked at my hands, thinking that I was going to have blood or something, but there was no blood. And I touched, there was no liquid or anything. And then I realized the sound is not physical. Even though I was listening to it like it was physical, somehow it was a psychic perception. And then when I realized that, I immediately continued with the breathing. And as I did, the blue light became more clear. And then I could differentiate the sound. It was like an explosion of millions of voices. It was voices. But now that I was continuing the breathing, I could see a voice by itself. And I realized I was listening to the thoughts of humankind, the whole humankind, the whole planet thinking together. And it was a massive chaos. But then as I continued breathing, suddenly I could understand. And I was like floating above that chaos. And I was fine. And as I continued, this thing went up, this snake that was going up, it went to the top of my head. And then I saw like the brain was somehow in a three-dimensional holographic form that ignite one spot of light that was connecting to other points. And then it was like tracing connections all over until there were not two hemispheres, but it was like a single ball of white light. When it finished connecting, then it made an explosion and my consciousness went everywhere. I was the universe. No, I was not in the universe. I was the whole universe. I was the intelligence of the universe. I was everything. And I was back home. That was a feeling. And to be there was like a second or a million years was the same. Everything that I lived was worth living for that coming back home. And I was so happy, so complete. And I was the life of the universe, not just the human Enrique. I was all the species. I was all the intelligence in all dimensions. And it was like, it's very difficult to explain that in a language that is so restrictive, because the language was designed to describe limitations in the perception of the third dimension. And that thing was not of the third dimension. So saying words like complete is actually not saying anything. It's just pointing at it. I don't have words to explain that. But at some point in the experience, I realized that I had to go back to my physical body. And then the will to do it made me go down. And I saw like this whole universe went like a spiral of violet energy that went down my body and entered to the top of my head and activated something in my forehead that looked like a jewel. It was like a jewel of violet. And when I see reality through that jewel, it was perfect and beautiful. Everything was perfect. Saint, sanctity everywhere. Everything I saw through that jewel was the perfection. And when I say anything, I mean anything. Even a tree was not just a tree. It was the God tree. And I was amazed for that perception, that activation in me, and the feeling I used to have that the world was imperfect and I need to find out this answer that is going to help me to understand and help everybody. That question was gone, because I realized that everything was perfect the way it was. And everybody was going through the experience they need. And it was fine. There was no hurry with this. And from the forehead, the energy that was coming down became I can only describe that as a drop of white light that went down from my forehead into my palate, and I sensed like a sweet flavor. I don't know how to explain that, but it was honey, but it was beyond honey. And this drop of white went down, but it was not just a drop. It was my consciousness dropping or falling. And then it fell from my throat down into my heart. And when I was going down with that drop, I noticed the ocean we have in here. There is a huge white ocean of milk. That's what I experienced at the moment. It was like milk, like an expansive, infinite ocean. And I was going down into that ocean. I was going to be part of it. And when I noticed the ocean, I was like in awe. Like, I remember my mind screaming, the kingdom, the kingdom. That was the only thing I could say before I just fused myself with that. And all the knowledge and everything was there. I was part of everything. I understood alchemy and physics, and it was like the knowledge was me. I was the knowledge. And I didn't want to open my eyes, because I sensed that the feeling of all those energies, the visions I already had were so great that this physical reality was just a spot of dust, of nothing. But I realized that if I want to stay in that state of consciousness, am I going to stay with my eyes closed for the rest of my life? No, I cannot do this. So I opened my eyes and I stretched my hands and looked, and around my hands I saw this glowing green light. And I stand up and look at myself in the mirror, and my whole body was surrounded by lights, and it was an amazing sight. I was a halo around the head. It was very bright. I looked like a Christmas tree with all those with all those lights. It was a really amazing experience. And for 4 days, I was in that state of consciousness, not just with the phenomenological experience of the light, but also in exchange with all forms of light, I could sense their thoughts, their feelings. I could sense their paths, what they do to reach that moment. And I could see clearly how the path was going to take them. I saw what was coming in the days, um, in the months, but the more time was going forward, the more difficult to see the future. I could see clearly the future that was immediate, that was coming, that was days, but the future that was year was really like not that defined, but it was there. So I realized that time was just a different velocity. Like consciousness is also in the future, but it's running too fast for my present perception of that. And the past is also there. My consciousness is there, but the past is running so slow that from my location in the present, I see the past as static, as if this is not moving. But actually consciousness is moving in those three different realms, only moving in different velocities, different speed. And well, that was a whole experience of expansion of consciousness and awakening. And for 4 days, that was the experience. It was everything and it was nothing. It was complete. And then I was just another human. And there is no such a thing as just another human, because all humans are that universe. So it was like, language cannot describe that. But that was the fourth dimension of consciousness. That was the expansion of consciousness the humankind is going to enter. And through that experience, I realized that the contact was not exactly what we think. And that creates some problems with my relationship to the Ramas, because I quit the view they have on the contact. They think that we are being visited by aliens from another planet, and I cannot believe that anymore. I don't think these aliens are actually from a physical location like ours. I understand that at our level of development and technological advances, we have the tendency to interpret their presence as advanced technological societies that are traveling through because that's what we want to do, we want to achieve. And in that sense, they represent the next step in evolution for us. But they are way more than that. Things that we cannot even get to understand right now because we are not at the level. So the contact is real. These aliens are real, but they are not what we think they are. And they are way more than we think they are. And they are love in essence. They have good intentions. At least through the experiences I have, I can tell you that they actually want to help us in our path. So that's a very short review of my experiences. And I don't know if you guys have questions about this.
So how is the approach in the Rama group for doing C5?
Well, let's say in Denmark, you meet with 6, 12 people, I don't know. You guys are gonna do the C5 work, but through the Rama protocols. Then you will go to the location and you will probably meet in a circle. As you do the circle, you would present yourself. I am this, I'm interested in the phenomenon because of this or that. I had a sighting when I was a kid or whatever happened. So all of you guys get to know each other and your intentions. And when you do that, you're probably gonna do what we call the dome of protection. We stand up and we put our hands up and then we breathe in and out as we call the energy from the, let's say, the sky to come down and embrace us and protect the group, and then going through us into the earth. And then from the center of earth, it comes an energy up and it fills the whole group with this protection, a dome of energy that is around us. And that somehow put us in sync with the energy of the planet and the cosmos. And after that, we can practice some mantras. The mantras we use more frequently are Rama, which means sunlight on earth. It's Ra-Ma. Ra means sunlight, and Ma is the vibration of the planet Earth. So we practice it in this way. It's like we breathe in. When we exhale, we do Ra-Ma, and we do it all together. And we feel the vibration rising as we continue doing the mantra. Then we can shift for another mantra. Maybe the opposite of Rama is Amar, which in Spanish means the act of love, loving. So it's like Amar. And then we practice another mantra, maybe Om. And we can do those mantras maybe 30 times each or 12 times each. And we continue raising the vibration with the group. And then after the mantras, we can go, all of us, into a deep meditation with the intention of connect to them, to the alien intelligence that is looking at us. And in the meditation, people started to have the experience. Sometimes we feel the presence around us. We don't see anything maybe, but we feel the steps walking around the group, maybe a touch, some hand touching our shoulders, stuff like that. Sometimes vivid images go through our heads, and it's like we see this stuff and we are in shock, like, what is this? Or maybe we can start exchanging mentally with them. And well, after that, we can do some stargazing and have some sightings. And if we receive during the meditation some automatic writing, we may have received also the information of what's the reason for us to be there. Because every time we go to the field, they attach some meaning to the experience. Okay, you guys are here because you have to send energy to your city because there is this upheaval of violence right now and you have to do something about it. Or maybe they say you have to send this energy to this leader of this country because we need to shift a little bit the way he's thinking. Those kind of missions we do when we do the protocols of Rama, and we receive the information whenever we are in the field. So every camping is different. We follow the steps of the dome of energy, the mantras, the meditation, but then after we receive the automatic writing, then we are supposed to follow more directions from them. That's the way it works.
Okay, thank you. I think Marcelo is gonna ask a couple of questions from Sim and Astrid.
Okay.
So he'll come on.
Okay. So Enrique,
Mm-hmm.
as Astrid was wondering, when you were having these wild, incredible experiences, was anyone else with you, or were you able to share it and talk about it with someone else and process it, or did you have to do it all on your own? And how was that for you? And how did that affect your life?
Look, the most intense experiences, I had them mostly by myself with no witnesses. I had other experiences with witnesses that were not that intense, like sightings, sometimes big sightings, the ship's moving and I'm with 3-4 people there. Those we had. But the physical encounter, mostly I had it by myself. I had it 3 times in my life already. And one of the first encounters was even before Rama, and for that one, I had a witness. Months before I went for Rama, I was trying to sleep. I think I was 17 years old at the time, and suddenly I appeared in this desert. I was standing in the middle of this desert. It was like sunset. The sky was a little reddish in colors, and at the distance I noticed something was standing, and I thought maybe it's a person that is going to help me. So I started walking through the desert trying to get to that person, I thought. But the more I walk, I realized the thing that was standing was a tree. It was a tree, a very ancient tree that was white. The cortex of the tree looked like a stone, like white stone. As I approached more and more, I realized the majestic piece of stone, because it looks like petrified tree, and it was amazing. The trunk was so big that I couldn't see behind the tree. I had to walk around because there was a light behind the tree. So as I walk around, I find out it was the brightness, the light coming behind the tree was an elder. The elder was standing, and beside him there was a platform. On top of that, a book that was open. And the elder pointed at the book like I was supposed to read. When I look at it, there were symbols that I couldn't understand. At the time, you have to remember that I was not in Rama yet, so I didn't have any notion of these things. And I remember that trying to understand the symbols, I look again to this elder, and he pointed at the book again. So I stretched my hands, and when I tried to touch the book, I realized the book was alive. I sensed the feeling that this thing was alive. Not only that, every symbol had a content of information that was really deep, and I was feeding myself with images and information about history. If I move the pages to the right, I could see the future of humankind. If I move the pages to the left, I could see the past of humankind. And I sensed that I was feeding myself. I was not learning, I was feeding. And there was so much information that I was going crazy with that. And the elder, he went close to me and pushed me back, like, no more. And I asked him, I have to. There is so much that I need to know. And then he pointed at the top of the tree, and I noticed a snake that was sleeping at the top of the tree, and I was afraid that thing was going to wake up. Well, the thing is, it happened more. The elder told me something there, but then I heard the yelling, the crying of someone, and then I went back to my physical body, and it was my cousin. My female cousin was sleeping in a bed that was beside me. And as she woke up to go to the bathroom, she looked at my bed and she noticed 2 beings that were wearing this white robe, she said, that were sitting on top of my bed, but it seems like they were floating. And when she saw those beings, she started yelling, and she woke me up. And as I opened my eyes, I noticed the silhouette of light moving beside my bed, and I closed my eyes and I told her, "You're fine, just calm down, just breathe, everything is gonna be fine." And then when she calmed down, I opened my eyes again, and there was nothing in the room. And I asked her what happened, and then she told me, "I saw these beings sitting on top of you." And at the same time, I was having this vision of the desert, the tree, and the book. And I realized that that experience at 17 was the first time when I could touch the other side and have a witness that the other side was touching this reality too. It was not just my consciousness going into the mysterious. It was the mystery touching this reality because I had a witness. For me, that was the most important witness because that was the beginning of this path. I hope that answered your question, Marcelo.
Yeah, great answer. And that thing about touching the books, when in the past when you were in school, touching the books and absorbing the information, can you still do that?
No. That experience lasted it was 4 days in a row. I actually wrote a whole book about it. It's called Yo viví 4 días en la cuarta dimensión. It's in Spanish. It means I lived 4 days in the fourth dimension. And in those 4 days, my mind was not the mind of Enrique. It was like God was looking through my eyes. It was different. And the expansion was full. Now, I can have some moments when I like suddenly awake again and then go down again. That can happen. I understand that I can read a book and understand the book deeply in a way that my mind can create a simple version of the content, so I can communicate that information in an easy way. And I've been doing it in my channels of YouTube to the people, and people really value that that shrinking of content for them, because I'm somehow clarifying content. It's like that's what I'm supposed to do now. But to read at that speed, just touching, no, I cannot do that anymore.
Well, what you were describing about the 4 days of living in the fourth dimension, it sounds also very like the same thing as the enlightenment experience for a temporary experience. How was your life after that? How were you able to live on Earth after that?
I couldn't. In the beginning, when my mind went back to the realization of the human form, the feeling of being in limitation was overwhelming. I didn't want to live. I wanted to kill this physical form in order to free myself. And I was going to do it one day. I remember I stand up at the roof of my house. It was a 4th floor. And I thought, I'm going to just jump and that's the end. And nobody needs to know about this. And I know the evolution will continue. I'm not damaging anything. There is no karma in this. I just have to free myself. And as I was ready to do it, I heard in my head this sentence. And it says, this is a phrase from the Christian Bible. And Jesus Christ was saying something like, it was like, the birds have nests where to live, and the foxes have their houses in the ground, but the Son of Man does not have a place where to rest his head. I know it's a bad translation, but it's something like that. And when I heard those words, I realized that I was not alone. It's like we have been here so many times, and this is the way it's supposed to be. Even though I'm trapped in this physical form for a while, for a tiny time, is what is supposed to happen. And I'm not supposed to run from it. I'm supposed to be here until the mission is accomplished. So it's fine. I'm gonna handle it, and I'm gonna live like any other human, and I'm gonna learn the way we humans learn, and I'm gonna have the experiences. At the time I was 20, so you have to imagine that I was even a virgin at the time. I didn't have sexual intercourse, or I didn't travel at the time. So I was really a clean, clear board. And there was so many things to live. And I needed to live as a human in order to communicate to humankind what happened. Because in a way, I was a model or a path others will follow. So yeah, it was not easy to accept the life without that experience. But then I realized that when you touch the eternal, you cannot lose it. It's part of you. It's only perception what makes you feel like you have lost that. And perception is the opposite of knowledge. So I was not going to fight perception. I was just going to accept that I have perceptions as I'm human, but knowledge is there. And whenever I need it, it's going to come up. It's going to be there for me.
There's a question from one of our members, Zim. He has been meditating for quite a few years, and sometimes when he does, this intense pain comes to his third eye, to the middle of his forehead, and and it becomes sometimes quite intense. Could you give him some insight or some guidance about that?
If I was him, whenever I feel the pain, I will go into the pain. I will sense it and I will increase it and I will do it like the maximum experience of pain I can have. As I go through that pain, I will activate that center. I know pain seems to be a barrier, seems to be like a wall that I cannot go through, but it's just because we are afraid of it. Don't be afraid of pain. Go through pain. Experience the pain willfully. And then you're going to find liberation in that and expansion also.
And going back to before, when you were younger and you're having these incredible experiences, crazy experiences, and you had resistance, mental resistance, like, no, this can't be real, this can't be possible. Can you please talk about what you've realized about how that resistance is like a self-built wall, for example, and especially considering the advice, the guidance that you just gave Zim?
Yeah, at that time, I was afraid because I was denying myself power. Beyond fear, or when you go through fear, you will find yourself in the other side. Is the power you find is actually you. And whenever I confront the experience of contact and I was having a physical encounter with them, I was afraid not of them. I was afraid of love, actually. I was afraid of that intimate connection, that deep link between our minds. And it's because I'm afraid of me. And most humans have that thing. They are afraid of the real faces, not the masks or the costumes we wear as we have this experience in this timeline, but beyond that fiction is us. And we are so powerful, so immense, limitless. But the only way is go many times through that fear. So that's why I have to confront that experience over and over and go to the trauma of the physical encounter until I realized that I was afraid of my illusions only. And that comes with time, with practice.
Yes. There's another question from Zim. He was asking about synchronicities, like more, like, for example, a synchronicity happened to him in this session when you mentioned, he was thinking about the word book, and suddenly you mentioned the word book right at that moment. And he was wondering, is there some book that has all these symbols that you're talking about, something that we can access and check out?
These beings talk about the book they call El libro de los de las vestiduras blancas, the book of those with the white robes. That was the translation. And that book is supposed to be in Rama, they think the book is supposed to be like an archive of our real history, the history of humankind and all the previous civilizations before this humanity. That's what the Ramas think.
Like the Akashic Records?
Kind of like the Akashic Records, yes. Actually, they say it's a vibration that is around the planet. Let's say that you have a telescope that is really powerful, and if you see into the galaxy, the night, you will notice some bright star. And let's say that if you can decompose the light, maybe you could see the history of that star, because the light that is reaching your telescope has traveled for, let's say, 100 light years. So when you see that light, you are seeing the history of that star 100 years ago. So you see the whole history is traveling in light all around the universe. And now, let's say the planet Earth is also emitting this light, and is also recording this light around his own field of energy. I think it's called the Van Allen belt around the planet. And that belt is actually an archive of information. But it's not just history. History is what we can understand now, because we understand the timeline and the path we are following. It's beyond history. Is information, is content, is meaning, and it became a book just symbolically, because we understand a book as an archive of information. Of course, if you have a meeting with those beings, you're going to see a book because that's what you understand, but it's not necessarily a book. Well, many people that saw this book, we see it as a book that is made of metallic pages, and those metallic pages are imprinted with symbols. It's not a language of this earth, not at all. And every symbol is a door to meaning. It's not just a word, it's a door to meaning that is whole, that is complete. And when you access that book or those symbols, you are actually knowing yourself in connection with the universe. So that's why I say it's not just the history of the planet Earth, it's beyond that. And the book, I think, is a symbol. I think that's the book of life that is mentioned in the scriptures, the sacred scriptures. Also, the tree is the meaning of the tree of life. So, yeah, I think those are very powerful symbols. And when I say symbol, I'm not saying they are not real. I honestly think that those symbols are more real than this physical form. This is also a symbol. I'm not this physical form. I'm using this physical form, and you too. So yeah, that's my view on the book of the White Brotherhood.
And another question from Zim is about, you mentioned that you didn't think that those were aliens from another planet. And in the last interview that we had a couple of weeks ago with Ray Hernandez, he mentioned how Jacques Vallée said he would be very disappointed if the aliens, that if they were just from another planet coming with nuts and bolts technology coming over here. He was thinking it was more like multidimensional beings. Mm-hmm. And my question to you also, combined with what Zim said, because he was thinking, where, if they're not coming from some other planet, where are they coming from? And I was wondering, in that mist, when you had that meditation experience, when you saw where you had gone in those 4 hours of missing time, do you think you're one of them?
That I am one of them?
Yes. This body is just a shell. In your core essence, you're deeply connected to them.
Yes, but not in the sense you are thinking. Yes, in the way that you are also part of them. Because you see, we come from the unmanifested, where we are a whole thing to become this singularity, this individual, this personality, and that's the fiction. Whenever we get rid of the illusion of what we think we are, then we get to know what we are. It's like if I take away this mask and you take away yours, behind those masks is the same being. Not just between you and me, but it's the same being with them. I don't know if you understand that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So in that sense, yes, we are them.
And there's a question from Astrid connected to this. Are you still in contact with them, even though they are you and us?
Yeah.
And how do you relate to them in everyday life?
I don't look at them as, well, I do it in the way of the Rama protocol for the people that is looking for the C5 experience. I go with them, they have the sightings, they have experiences that are amazing, in the same way the Rama unfolds when I was in the 80s. But right now, in the day-by-day experience, I see them everywhere. I see them in these lights that I have here. I see them in you guys, in the trees that are out there, in the connection I have with my clients. Intelligence is everywhere. And I don't mean levels of intelligence. There is no such a thing as levels. Levels are illusions. At the end, behind all those costumes, we are the same being. Call it Krishna, Christ, alien being, Buddha, nature, whatever you call it, is the same thing. So I try to live my life with that feeling of being in connection with everything, and everything is this high intelligence. Now, if I try to interpret this as I am this physical form, I am this human being in the year 2020, then I see humans pushing for the technological development, and I see years ahead the artificial intelligence coming, and this is not a machine or a cyborg intelligence as we think. This is actually the summum of our whole evolution. So that intelligence is actually in connection with that other side of reality. And once we reach that point, we are realizing that this reality is actually a virtual reality. And it's not that we create that artificial intelligence, but that intelligence was playing with many different possibilities of reality, and we are one of them. It's another interpretation, but it's a valid one too.
You know, Enrique, it was in, I remember there was this man, his name was Robert Adams. And when he was about 14 years old, and this was like in 1944, he had an awakening experience where he just suddenly saw that everything was made of light and that this reality wasn't real, like what you're describing before. And he had the intelligence, the super intelligence to realize that if he told too many people about it, that he would end up in a mental hospital, right? And so he eventually talked to some yogi, autobiography of Paramahansa Yogananda. Mm-hmm. You must know of him, I think. Yeah. And he ended up going to India. And in India, they already had a cultural context for all this. Mm-hmm. And it seems like you also went towards the ancient Indian teachings, as we chatted before this conversation started. Uh-huh. So can you please comment about that? Because it sounds like the ancient Indians were already doing this as well, you know, very aware that this life isn't real, that there's the fractal reality, actually, you know, the infinity of the fractal reality.
Mhm. Yes, yes. I think in the Vedas there is so much rich information from the past that can be actualized in our lives if we open ourselves to the old traditions. Not only in the Vedas, but also in the Buddhists from Tibet or the Bon even, and also in the traditions of the Andes, you will find these shining truths right there, and you just have to keep searching for that everywhere. As I told about the symbol of the triangle and the circle carrying, that represents a man made of light, the Sandman on Earth, which means that's the goal for humankind. We're going to reach that moment when we expand in light. Our consciousness is light. And this is not just for the Indians or the Egyptians or the Babylonians. This is for humankind. It's not for the Ramas either or for the sea fibers. No, it's for everyone if we take the challenge.
Well, Enrique, what you just mentioned, what about in this moment in time with such an incredible experience with the pandemic, putting all of society on pause, and a lot of people suddenly were re-questioning their lives. What do you see with that, in terms of like a evolutionary step up for all of humanity or part of humanity? What message do you have with that?
In 2019, I went to Shasta with a group. Around 4 a.m., I had a sighting on the mountain. There was some kind of city of light on the Shasta mountain. And I was really amazed because I had never had the sighting of that city. I heard the locals talking about some underground city called Telos. But this time I was looking with my physical eyes at this thing on top of the mountain. Not actually on top, but in the middle of the mountain, the lights. And then I went for witnesses. I need someone to see. So I start knocking at the tents, trying to wake up people. And 4 girls went with me to see this thing. And when they reached the location to see at the mountain, the lights changed. There were not a city anymore. There were like kind of like a pilgrimage or sinuous lights moving down from the top of the mountain to the bottom. And it looked like a strand of DNA. I remember that. I describe it as a pilgrimage, like lights going up or down the mountain, but it was also like a strand of DNA. And then in the beginning of the year, I felt like 2020 was going to be a year of challenges, big challenges. And when the virus came about, I realized that a virus is actually DNA. And we are in this physical form, in this specific form, because of viruses. These viruses have hit our genome more than 30 times through our evolution. And one of those retroviruses from the past, they create the possibility of the mammals to create the embryo inside the body. And that didn't exist before this virus. So what I mean is the virus is not getting with its information to destroy us, but to upgrade us. It's upgrading the genome of the humankind. So we shouldn't be afraid of this thing. Yes, some of us can die in the process, but there is an illusion. Losing a physical form, that doesn't mean the extinction of humankind. It's not going to happen. We are being invited to the expansion. And this virus is also pointing at the things we are doing wrong. I think it's very clear that we have been working this nationalism, trying to protect our community against the other community, the other race, the other religion. And because of that, we create this distance. And now that the virus is forcing us to the physical distance, now we resent that. Now we realize that we didn't want that. Well, now we have to live it. Now we have to experience it. Now we have to realize how much do we want separation. And I think this whole experience of the pandemic is actually a big, huge learning for humankind. And it's a cohesive process of learning. It's not just for that country or for this community. No, we all, as a whole, we are going to learn together. And it's a great, great experience for all of us. That's what I feel.
I have another question regarding when we were chatting before this conversation started. If you wouldn't mind talking about what you mentioned about being a stargazer, looking at at the sun. It was called Surya Yoga. I think you mentioned it. Sun Yoga.
Surya Yoga.
Okay.
Here in the United States, they call it sun gazing.
Sun gazing, and there was since Zen brought up the point of synchronicities. I have a synchronicity because we just started chatting about that before. And just last week, there was a 90-year-old yogi in India who died. And he had said he hadn't eaten or drank anything in like 50 years. And the Western science completely ignored that, but he was studied by some neuroscientists in India, neurologist, I think it was, neurosurgeon, I think it was, and put in a hospital room for 10 days. They made sure everything was shut and he didn't even use the toilet for 10 days. Okay. So, and he said he got his nutrition from looking at the sun and also this liquid that came from the back of his neck, down. And you were describing the light that came down from your third eye through the back, back of your throat into your tongue, your palate, and that it went down into I think you said your heart center. So it was quite, and in ancient India, they call that Amrit, the nectar of the gods.
Yeah, that's the word that came to my mind right now, Amrita or
Amrit. And also, or it could have been Soma, the famous Soma, that drug that they used as well, but no one knows what it was really.
Nectar.
Can you please share that experience, if you don't mind, share that experience, because it's there's so much about in the modern world about limitations and keeping people constricted in a little box, and that box seems to be breaking out, and people, like I've had this discussion with Indian friends from India, that research into these incredible yogis by Indian researchers, it has been like ignored by Western science. And it's so remarkable. And I had my own experiences where I saw these things too. And so would you mind talking about that, your own experience? It was so lovely to hear.
Yes. In the year, 2004, I was having physical problems, digestive problems. I was very overweight, and I went to the doctors, and they say that I was having some Helicobacter pylori because I had a very bad digestion, and they gave me a treatment for that. Then after the treatment, again the symptoms. I went to another doctor. He says IBS, irritable colon or irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah, irritable bowel syndrome.
And then Crohn's disease, and then another. And I was like tired of treatments and nothing worked. And then by accident, there is no accidents, but by accident, I received an invitation from someone that misspelled an email. I received an invitation for the teachings of Ira Ratang Manek. This is a yogi that was gonna give a lecture in Santa Monica. And what they explained in that short comment on the email, he was living from sunlight for more than 12 years at the time. So I was intrigued, because if my problem was coming from the intake of food, if I could learn that technique, maybe I could get rid of this physical problem. So I went to see him, and when I arrived, the room was completely full, and I couldn't enter the room. So I listened to the speech outside the room. But for me, it was amazing that even with his strong Indian accent, the form of his thoughts, the way he communicated, was so deep, so complete, that I could resonate with everything he was saying. And I didn't have any doubt that that thing works. So I waited until everybody left, and I approached Manek. I knew he was probably tired or he had something else to do, but I asked him, if I started doing your protocol, will you help me? Will you coach me into how to do it? And he said, of course. And he gave me his email. So we continued communicating through emails for a whole year and a half that took my process. Normally, the 44 minutes of looking at the sun, you will reach that level after 9 months of practicing. So what you do basically is you look at the sunlight at the moment the sun is setting or at the moment of the sunrise. Don't do it in the middle of the day because the ultraviolet rays are going to be too strong. So you have to do it in that window of time when the sun is setting. And you start doing it with 10 seconds of exposure, looking at the sun straight. And then you increase 10 seconds the next day and 10 seconds the next day until you reach 1 minute, 1 minute 10, 1 minute 20, until you reach 44 minutes. So I did it like that, increasing 10 seconds a day. But because of weather conditions and stuff, I couldn't do it like a straight discipline. And for me, it took like 1 year and a half. But it was a great experience, and many things happened through that experience. I reached the moment when I didn't have the need for physical intake of food, and I was practicing continuously the sun gazing. Manek recommended me that I was supposed to walk barefoot on dirt, not on grass, on dirt. And I did it. And that increased and awakened some dormant abilities. I started having this telepathic connection with people, especially when the moon was in certain positions and in certain phases. And that was a great experience. For 2 years, I was feeding myself from sunlight and no solid food. And it was an interesting experience, different than the 4 days in the 4th dimension. But it was equally amazing and an invite to the expansion, to thinking a different way. So yeah, I practiced that. My goal was to do it for 7 years, because I thought if I change my bones every 7 years, I have a new skeleton. What happened if I, for 7 years, just feed myself with sunlight and liquids? So what would I become? That was the goal. But 2 years after, when I was 2 years into the experience, I realized that I was a social being, but living as a stranger, because people couldn't understand. Not even my family could understand. And meaningful relationships were broken, and I realized that not eating was a very antisocial behavior. This society has built itself around food and is more ingrained in us than we think. And we don't eat because we are hungry. We eat because of a social thing, and we eat because conditioning. And we don't realize that. But as soon as you get rid of that hunger, then you actually understand the process. And now I went back to eating like everybody else. Of course, I try to respect life and everything, but from time to time, I do the sun gazing again. And it's always a joyous experience. I really like that.
Astrid suggested maybe you should emphasize that, for people not to try this at home without proper supervision, because it could damage people's eyes, right?
Definitely.
But, yeah.
I wouldn't suggest anybody to do it without the coaching of someone that is already doing it and knows the process.
Absolutely. And just to fill in, Enrique, like I mentioned before, I had a yogi friend in India when I was in India the guy was actually Afghanistani. He was born on a camel. His father used to be a camel herder, and his mother gave birth right when she was riding the camel. But he would stare at the sun every day for like 30 minutes in the middle of the day, and I don't remember seeing him eating, and I knew him quite well. So, and when you tell a normal Western doctor about this, or they'd say no, that's totally impossible. But
no, it is possible. When you have done the protocol of 44 minutes, you can actually look at the sunlight in the middle of the day with no problem.
And there's this incredible energy that comes to you, and like a hyper awareness as well.
Yes. And your body processes the luminic energy from the sunlight, and it becomes chemical energy for you, and it fits some other processes in your body. It awakens things that were dormant in you. It's like awakening a potential that was there. I honestly think that we are limitless. We just need to explore more into the unknown of us.
I completely agree. Well, Enrique, thank you very much. That was a wonderful interview and a lot of beautiful stuff that you shared with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thanks for the invitation, Carsten also, and thank you to the group in Denmark and everywhere they are listening to this. I'm very grateful for this invitation, and let's hope we can exchange some other time in the future. Thank you.